The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everyone. For those who have joined us, we're just going to give it a couple of more minutes for the rest of the group to get in. And if there's any questions, please feel free to use the chat box. We'll get started here in about 2 minutes. Thanks so much. Okay, thank you everyone for holding on. We're just going to give it 1 more minute before we go ahead and get started. As always, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to type them into the box, and I'll be happy to answer them as we go. We're just going to kick off here in about 1 minute. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining us here. My name is Dan Sharkey. I'm from 12 Points Wealth Management. And the topic we are looking to cover today for your summer project is organizing your finances. Not exactly what everyone puts at the top of their summer vacation bucket list, but given the fact that the summer can be usually more quiet at work and you perhaps find some extra time on your hands, this is actually a great time to look at some of these topics, and we'll go through them one by one to ensure that all your questions get answered and that you have a great sense of what you should be doing in terms of managing your financial life. And ultimately, that's what we're here to talk about. In terms of how the webinar will be structured, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. There should be a question bar at the bottom of your screen. When you signed up, please feel free to type in any questions you have at any time, and I'll be happy to go over them either at the time or at the very end to make sure that we cover all the topics that you're looking to discuss. So what we're going to do is we're just going to dive right in. There's just a little bit about my background. We don't need to waste too much time on me. I went to University of Colorado, and I've been with the firm just over a year, but we're not here to talk about me. So To start things off, we have a quote from Benjamin Franklin, and this can apply not only to your financial life, but to basically every part of your life, whether it's preparing your lunch the night before or organizing your estate. For every minute that you spend organizing is an hour earned. It's not only an hour earned in actual time, but it's an hour earned in the mental peace of knowing that where you have the security of understanding where things are located, that all your documents are in order, that people that you love and care about are protected because you've taken these steps to organize your financial life. A lot of times people think that this is simply about ensuring that you can access documents, but what you really want to ensure is that the structure you've built around your financial life is in order, and that everyone that you care about, that it will be impacted by these things, is aware of where things are. So as we get further into the details, we'll go over this list in more depth, but what we're going to do is talk about the tips for organizing important household documents. What do I mean by important household documents? Things like your will, any trust and estate documents, your bank accounts, your old tax returns. There's a variety of items that we'll discuss in this particular list that can be found via this blog post. All this information will be posted after this webinar has closed, so you'll be able to check these things out individually. This is actually an active link that brings you to a blog post. So if you were to click on this, once the materials are actually posted, you'd be able to find this entire checklist. What you would see if you were to actually pull this list right here, is that there's an entire litany of things that we want to ensure that you are actually saving, and that most importantly, you're understanding how long they need to be saved for and where they should be stored. So for example, just off the top here, citizenship papers, if that applies to you, if you're a veteran, where those papers are held, any deeds or titles or estate planning documents, financial accounts, old tax returns, an important contact page. All of those things are listed, and we also include you how long you should actually hold those. Where do you store them? Do you store them in a filing cabinet? Do you store them in a safe deposit box? Do you have a safe in your home? How long do I have to hold them for? Certain tax documents, 7 years. Other things should really be held for life. So it's really important that you understand not only where they be stored, but also how long they should be stored. If you're the average person, they sit in an unlocked filing cabinet somewhere in a desk drawer, probably not all located together. So it's important to think through everything you see on this list. And again, this is available. This is an active link. We will include that when this is saved, so you can access it at a later time. But things like your insurance policies, current bank statements, all those different types of things, your loan and mortgage documents, where are those held? Do you know where they are right now? So all those things are listed, and we'll touch on those in depth as we go through the webinar. Okay, so now we get into a little bit more of the kind of nitty-gritty of what we should be looking at. So as you see on the screen here, there's a lot of different areas that are how we have it broken out, and we just cite general examples of things that you want to be mindful of. Estate planning, debt, investments, retirement, personal. You could expand that category to a variety of different other things, but those are the ones that we'll just focus on for the right now. You always want to ensure that you're aware of not only where these things are held, but where can I access information if something is misplaced. So for example, do I know you create a will so that when you are gone, that your wishes can be upheld, but does anyone know where that will is? Is it with an attorney's office? Is it at a safe deposit box? If it is in a safe deposit box, where is the key? So all those different types of things are really important to think through. Other things such as your brokerage accounts, who has access to those? Where's the password? Those types of questions all need to be thought of as well. We want to ensure that as much as we possibly can to keep all these things in one place, because it's really important, and it's very easy for things to end up in one drawer versus another drawer versus somewhere else, and that's what leads to disorganization. The other thing I would point out, specifically as it relates to your retirement accounts, in this day and age, people have the tendency to change jobs every 3 or 4 years. I think the national average is 3.2 years in terms of how often people change employers. With those frequent changes of employment, you end up with a variety of retirement plans that encompass the entire spectrum of not only custodians, but also different individual accounts that were started while you were there. It is very important that you keep track of all those 401k plans that are no longer with your current employer, that you have out there. Our strong recommendation would be to do one of two things: either consolidate those into your current plan if the plan will allow that transition, or roll those over into an individual retirement account so all your assets are located in one place. While it might be easy to remember your last job, as you get to jobs 3, 4, 5, 6, etc., if you happen to have that many, it's very easy to forget where something is located, who is the custodian, who is the plan administrator, or to even forget that that account exists. So in order to avoid dollars being lost into ether, we would strongly recommend that you consolidate those for each individual account that you have. Along with things like your trust and estate docs that are more long-term in nature, there's also a lot of things that you will reference frequently. If you have children, you know this well, that in terms of social security numbers and birth certificates, employment records, things like that you'll be actually frequently referencing. So what we would recommend is consolidating all those quote unquote active files in a single place. Do you know where your social security card is? Do you know where your spouse's security or partner's social security card is? Your children, do you know what their social security numbers are? The most recent 3 years of your tax returns, can those be easily accessed? Along with, I know we're talking about our financial life, but where your passport's located or your global entry cards. If you have any type of citizenship paperwork, where is that located, and is that stored in a safe place? And you just really want to know where all those things are, so you can access them at a relatively quick pace, because things come up unexpectedly. One really important thing to point out here: your beneficiary designations. For all your retirement accounts, those are going to dictate if something were to happen to you, who would get that money. And people often forget when they initially fill out a form who they designate as their beneficiary. As you go through time, things change as to who you want as your beneficiary. At a certain point, if your children are young, it might be their guardians or a sibling or a parent if you don't have any children. As your family expands, then it becomes your children or a friend or another type of guardian. So it's always important to understand and to constantly refresh that to understand what those designations are. If you keep them handy in an active file cabinet, you can go back and reference them frequently and understand exactly what you have for each individual account that you own. Also, your loan and mortgage docs. The reason that we reference this is because those, as any homeowner on the line knows, your mortgage is sold frequently. So actually knowing where your mortgage stands at any given time is a relatively difficult thing to try and remember. So anytime you get an update, it'd be important, if you have an active file cabinet, to put that right in there so you actually know who is the one that's servicing your mortgage. This is just a quick snapshot of that larger list that I mentioned earlier in the webinar. It breaks down the common household documents that you would see, everything from your tax returns to your contribution records to your bank statements to your condo association records. And this just gives you a general guideline of how you should be keeping them. We would suggest for taxes at a minimum of 7 years. Most everything else on this list can be held forever, but there's a way to do it smartly too. For example, brokerage statements, you don't necessarily need to hold forever. However, if there's an issue with your taxes, that's the look back period that they can go back and question a return. So it's important to keep those handy. Now, in 2019, we are not suggesting that you have a giant box in your garage that has all these statements. There are a variety of virtual options that would allow you to store this information securely, Google Drive being the most obvious one, or an independent hard drive on your home, depending upon how you feel about the internet security. Obviously, hacking is always at the forefront of someone's mind. People have different reactions on how they like to store their documents. Depending if you're of a certain generation, people like to actually have physical documents. I don't think that's the most efficient way to do it, but I can certainly appreciate the concern about putting your information up online or anything like that. There are a lot of other secure options that we can talk about, whether it be Dropbox or Google Drive, that has a variety of levels of storage options, and you'd be able to keep that at your fingertips at all times, and ensure that you can go back and reference these documents whenever that is needed. That would be our recommendation, depending upon your level of comfort with storing things virtually. The more information that you can keep organized in electronic form allows you to get to things quicker, and allows you to store more and more documents without overburdening it from a physical standpoint. The safe deposit box. Everyone should have one of these for a variety of reasons. Whether you're a homeowner, a parent, whether you have a passport, there's going to be documents that you possess that you want to be able to store in a safe deposit box. Any local branch of your bank, whether it be a community bank or a national bank, will most likely have this option, and they're typically no more than $80. It's a very worthwhile thing to have, due to the fact that they're fireproof, they're secure, and you know exactly where everything will be kept. The deed to your home or any other type of investment property, all your estate documents can be held there, birth certificates. And what we're really talking about is the actual physical document itself. A lot of times, especially for your estate documents, you'll receive copies of the estate documents as well. Those copies of your estate documents, please feel free to store electronically or physically at your home, if you would like to reference them at any given point in time. But the actual physical documents themselves, particularly bonds, if you still owned a physical bond, a lot of bonds have been moved to electronic format, but if you still owned a physical bond, having it in a safe deposit box is very important. A lot of people also like keeping their passport there as well. I would recommend, though, if you do take that approach, and to ensure that you know when you're going to be going on a trip, because as bank hours, as everyone knows, are not the most flexible, and you want to be able to access that document if you actually need it. So just be mindful of what you actually put in there if you're going to reference it frequently. If you never travel, then that would be fine. But if you travel frequently, that may not be the best place to store that particular item. Discarding items. The most important thing you see on this slide right here is this magical tool called a shredder. If you can avoid getting paper documents, if you can get things set electronically, and again, we would recommend that particular process because it cuts down on waste, and also, in our belief, adds security in terms of how the documents can be stored. But if you opt for paper, which is entirely a very personal choice, you should absolutely own a shredder. A shredder allows you to discard your most sensitive documents that include your social security number, account number, any other identifying information, and discard of that information when those documents are no longer relevant. Any type of checks or coupons, things like that you don't necessarily need anymore, but anything that contains a sensitive piece of information should absolutely be shredded. You can buy these at Staples for $50, and it'll be the best $50 you ever spend, knowing that all your documents that contain information that you do not want the public to see will be destroyed as soon as you have no more use for them. So we would highly recommend this. Salary statements, again, if you can get those electronically, we would highly recommend that. Direct deposit is always the preferred method of being paid. So as much as you can streamline to avoid things being sent to your house, we would highly recommend that. This is by far the biggest thing that people do not think about, is your digital assets. What do we mean by digital assets? Facebook, email passwords, Instagram, Twitter, other social media, access to your Google Drive, which I mentioned earlier, any type of family legacy page or personal family website. Do you have a second home in which you use a virtual booking method that would be very valuable to you? All those things are very important and should be actively managed as much as possible. The other most important thing is, where are the passwords for those accounts? If, God forbid, something were to happen to you, do you want people being able to still access your Facebook page? Do you want people to be able to add pictures to your Instagram feed? Those are the kind of questions that you need to ask, and ensure that those passwords and those files are easily accessible should something happen to you. You can do one of two things. Again, there are virtual options such as LastPass, which is a password, an app on your phone or computer that manages all your different passwords. The added benefit to that is they also have the ability to generate extremely long and complicated passwords that add another layer of security to your individual accounts, and that's all stored on an app on your phone, or something as simple as a file in your file drawer. What we would call that is a legacy file, and that ensures that someone is able to go turn these things off as you wish if something were to happen to you, or if for some reason that you become incapacitated and you don't want that information still floating out. So it's very important to keep those passwords active in your mind and understand where they're saved, and trust that whoever you designate to deal with this after you're gone, that they know how to actually make those changes. In 2019, ensuring that your digital personality and persona is protected is very, very important, and we should be mindful of it each time we sign up for a new social media account or some type of other online directory. This asset mapping and location is exactly what I was referring to in terms of creating a legacy file. The legacy file does not simply include things such as your password, your Facebook password, but it includes a roadmap of all the different things that you need, that someone would need to retrace your steps to managing your financial life. Where are things located? In what filing cabinet? You can be the most organized person in the world, but if you don't create a roadmap for someone to come in after you're gone and actually access the things that you were so diligent about storing, it's all for nothing. So it's really important to understand that you not only need to organize your finances, but you need to create some way for someone other than you to recreate your steps. And that does, we would recommend not necessarily sharing that with everyone, but there should be someone in your life or someone outside of your spouse, perhaps a little bit detached, who can actually do that for you. You also don't need to give them the full roadmap right away. All you can say is, on the top drawer of my desk, this is where this is located. So they can't actually access it until you're gone or until you're incapacitated, but it's really important that things are listed clearly, where things are saved, how they're saved, and to understand that it's really important that they need to get to this information for all the years that you've spent actually collecting it. So whether it's physical or electronic, someone needs to know how to find it in case something were to happen to you. The same thing goes for something like an insurance policy. You need to have, that's a perfect example as well. You may have done all the right things, taken all the right steps to ensure that you're insured and that your family's legacy is secure. But if no one knows that policy exists, it doesn't do you much good. So it's important to keep all these things mapped so it's very clear where things are located. Everplans. Everplans is a service that we provide to our clients and that you can get individually. This is the legacy file in digital format that I was mentioning. You can save your wills and trusts and health proxies and medical information, important passwords, final wishes. Something as, how do you really want to be buried? How do you want your Facebook account treated? Do you want to have a service? What is it that you want to communicate to your family after you're gone? They not only provide the storage and the location digitally for you to save this, they also have checklists and other kind of worksheets that allow you to understand what you should be thinking about that you currently are not. No one wants to think about potentially finding themselves in this situation, but it'll eventually happen to everyone. And this is a leading platform that allows you to secure your information digitally, and while still allowing someone to access it should the need arise. The other thing that you would include in here is any type of information that you want disseminated to your larger family. Again, whether that's financial information or a final wish, that's always important. And this can all be saved in a single place at Everplans. Okay, so now we want to talk about organizing your financial life on more of a day-to-day basis. How do you think about money? How do you think about organizing your budget? How do you think about organizing your financial life in kind of an operating mode? What we talked about previously was you've created this massive wealth of data, and how is that stored? But let's kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about how are you operating daily in your financial life, and is that part of your life organized? Cash flow being the most important thing. A lot of people think about budgeting as a way to save money. Should I bundle or unbundle is one of the most common questions that we get from clients. That's the wrong way to think about it. What you want to do is think about how much money am I actually spending, and are those am I being intentional with my dollars? It's not necessarily about figuring out a way to save more money. It's about understanding where that money is going and does that currently align with my goals. The example I would provide is oftentimes clients come to us and say, hey, look, I really want to take this trip, but I don't know if it's the best financial decision. If you completely understood what your goals were, what your priorities are, exactly how much you need to operate on a monthly basis, what you're gonna over time, what will happen is you'll fully understand whether or not big financial decisions such as a big purchase or a big trip are reasonable. And then once you have that awareness and you have that ability to understand exactly how your dollars are being allocated and that the most important things in your life are actually being taken care of, you have the mental freedom to take that leap, to make that big purchase without thinking you're compromising something in your future. So we'll dive into this a little bit more deeply. Apps. Everyone's got 1,000 apps. We don't need to talk about their usefulness and some good, some bad, but these are four that we have seen our clients use in the past that have been very helpful. Personal Capital, EveryDollar, Wally, Mint, they all offer a slightly different version of the same thing. Most people are most familiar with Mint, which is a Intuit product, which does TurboTax. And also does QuickBooks, so you should be very familiar with that particular product. Most people are. That's free. The issue with Mint is that you get the barrage of ads and those kind of things. Again, this is a very personal choice. Some people do not like the idea of aggregating their assets online on a single platform. You would be perfectly within your right, and that's a perfectly reasonable position to take. So don't feel as if we're necessarily saying this is for everyone, but this is a way, if you're the type of person who can't seem to get a hold of themselves financially, to organize your data and allow them to use their algorithms and their application to kind of filter out exactly where you're spending, how much you're spending, the frequency in which you're spending, so you can then create that awareness that I was talking about earlier. Forgetting the forgotten. This happens when you don't do the things that we were talking about earlier. Where do I get an old security card? Where do I get my marriage certificate, death certificate for a loved one, birth certificate for my kids? They all can be found, but like anything else, when dealing with, in most cases, the federal government, it's going to be a long and painful process, and this is a process that can be easily avoided. Most oftentimes, like for the Social Security office, you're just going to have to call the Social Security office and then jump through the steps to ensure that you can prove who you are as a person. But there's a way to avoid doing all this. It's just to be mindful of where you're putting things and to have a plan to actually to store all this information. Fear not, you can always get these documents back, but I'd be lying if I said it was a overly simple process. For a more in-depth look, we've also had a blog post on this as well. So please feel free to check that out whenever you get a chance. And again, all this will be posted once the webinar is complete. Okay. The next part is unclaimed property. You hear all these ads on TV all the time. You know, call 1-800, find mass money, things like that. Most people aren't going to be impacted by this. If you do suspect that there is an IRA from a beneficiary that you are entitled to, or money that you have not yet to claim, it's worth a phone call. For those who are listening from Massachusetts, this is a very easy link to actually go through. And if there's any doubt that you have something that you're entitled to that you don't actually know where it is, I would highly recommend just doing it. It doesn't take much time. And it's an easy way to ensure that you don't have any property that you are entitled to. A lot of times, generally speaking, when we think of assets that are misplaced, it generally involves a loved one who has died and left money that I am not aware of. Everyone dreams of old Uncle Ned out in Kansas who leaves me $10 million. It's more likely that Aunt Betty forgot to tell you that she had an IRA with $1,000 in it that has your name on it, and then you're just not aware of it. That's the more likely scenario. But if you utilize some of these resources, you could be able to claim, you could be able to find some dollars that you weren't necessarily thinking of. There's always assets that are misplaced. So it's if you have a couple minutes and you're interested, we would recommend doing it because you really have nothing to lose. Little things go a long way. Separate finance email. If you're anything like me, you have 2,000 unopened emails in your Gmail account, mainly from REI and other retailers that you are just build and build and build. And to stay organized, I have a separate finance email. My mortgage statements, my credit cards, any type of bank account is completely isolated so that I know when emails come in to that particular account, they're important and they need to be addressed. That's not for everyone because that creates another layer of information you need to keep track of, but it can be very helpful because it strips away all the nonsense from the gap that you get on what seemingly by the hour. So that's a very good way to isolate things that are really important. Credit cards. Just to be clear, credit cards in and of themselves are not the issue that people run into. It's the behavior that you manifest when you actually have a credit card that leads to problems. Credit cards themselves are excellent vehicles for not only building credit, obviously, but the rewards programs that are attached to those cards can be very, very beneficial. If you like to travel, if you like to eat out, if you want to save money on gas or groceries, there's a litany of things that you can benefit from if used responsibly. So whenever you find yourself, thinking about a credit card, it's be very important. One, will my behavior change if I use this card? If the answer to that is no, then you should really spend some serious time thinking about what's important to me, what do I care about, and what could I benefit from? And that's the type of card that you should have. We see a lot of clients who, between it, whether it's free hotel rooms or flights or cash back, whatever the case may be, they really benefit from being active users of credit cards, but only because they have the discipline to ensure those balances are paid and to ensure that they spend within their means. That ties directly back to the budgeting thing we mentioned earlier and the awareness, creating awareness about your financial life that we really strive for. Your credit score. Everyone should know what their credit score is, and they should be actively monitoring it to ensure that not only their account hasn't been compromised, but that there's no issues in that particular card. You had a Macy's bill 2 years ago that you totally forgot about. That's now buried in there. Well, that's consistently going to hurt your credit. How credit is calculated is that obviously any late payments or delinquents, your current usage of your card, how much, what is your credit limit and what amount of that limit is currently being utilized. And then your credit history. How long has the account been open? How many years of data do credit card companies have to judge you on? Those are going to be the three driving factors to your overall credit score. Your credit score is very important. It helps you secure financing when needed. Some employers look to your credit history to judge whether you're going to be a viable job candidate. So it's very, very important to not only know what your credit score is, but that you're active in maintaining that it's positive. If you're in the 500s, there are ways to get out of that, but you really have to create that awareness. And then identity protection. LifeLock is the one that you hear most of. That's a good way to ensure that you can kind of monitor your credit history. I don't think in 2019 anyone is immune from hackers, but what you want to do is not be the low-hanging fruit. Things such as a password manager. Don't use your kid's name and birthday as a password. There's been more research shown recently that instead of using a password that has an @ sign instead of an A or an exclamation point instead of a 1, just use very long phrases. The lazy brown dog jumps over the fox. Those types of things that when strung together make your password very, very hard to guess and very hard for hackers to compromise. So all these little things go a long way, but as far as identity protection is concerned, just don't be the low-hanging fruit. Don't be the house on the street that doesn't lock their doors or windows. Don't be the house that doesn't have a spotlight outside or not have a dog. Things like that, because if you were to think about a hacker in a virtual world, they're just going to go on to the next person who has an easy to guess password, i.e. the person with their door unlocked or the window unlocked. So just don't be the low-hanging fruit. And that is basically all we have for today. I'm going to take my picture off there because that is not a good picture of me. But our next event is going to be, our next webinar is higher education planning and saving. Greg and Jared will be doing that one. But what I wanted to do now is see if anyone had any questions. If you do have any questions, please feel free to type them right into the question box there, and I'd be happy to answer them. And we'll just leave you with this. This is boring. We all get that, but it's really, really important. You will sleep better knowing where things are held, how things are titled, why things are kept in a certain way, and knowing that people can actually access this data after you are gone. It's amazing that once you have this organized, how easy it is to keep it organized because you've done the legwork in setting up the overall program. So we would highly recommend you do it. And just, again, if there's one theme that I would leave you with today is creating awareness about where things are and being mindful of each decision that you make, because that will have an impact down the road. And usually when we discuss these things in terms of your financial life, there's an event that occurs that needs immediate attention. So the more organized you can be now, the better served you'll be in the future. The last thing I'll leave you with, if there are no questions, is it's also a good time to change the batteries in your smoke detectors. People always don't do that either, and that's a very easy thing, and we want to ensure that that you're doing that as well. Again, this will be posted to the website. If you have any questions at all, my email address, I will just go back here real quick, is dan@12pointswealth.com. You can feel free to give me a call as well, whatever's on your mind. And then we look forward to talking to you again in September. Again, please feel free to reach out with any questions. What you see on the screen now is all the contact information, Facebook, LinkedIn, or any other resource. Again, so I hope everyone has a wonderful day. We're here if you need anything at all. And have the great rest of your summer. Hopefully more exciting than organizing your financial life, but let's not fool ourselves. This is important too. All right, I hope everyone has a wonderful day.